Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Ah, you're there. Thank you. I wish my parents had named me Moses. That would have been really cool. I guess I got enough ego problems as is. So great to have you all here. I'm going to start with some thank yous. First of all, we've got to recognize the Young People's Chorus again. Incredible. So for those who didn't catch it, that chorus featured several of our young residents who are experiencing homeless right now that are able to go a few times a week to be a part of that chorus and perform in Carnegie Hall, and their parents are so proud. And that's incredible, and we're so grateful to have had them here. That was a really special moment, so my thanks to Tamron Hall for all of her work supporting DV survivors and thanks experiencing homelessness. So thank you so much, Tamron. So my gratitude to so many of you in this room who are our generous sponsors, especially our lead sponsors, and Honickman, Deloitte, Lowe's, and so many of you. For this night only, the more that you gave, the more I like you. It's really, like tomorrow's another day, but tonight, yeah, best friends. Thank you so much. And we are obviously trying to raise money for critical work that I'm going to talk about in a minute. I'm so excited to, when I'm done here, I'll introduce Fernando Villa, our honored co-chair, and designed so many of the buildings that you see in this gorgeous images around you. I want to recognize our partners in government. There have been many here tonight, so I'm going to go through this, but Deputy Secretary of Human Services and Mental Hygiene, Peter Hatch, Comptroller Mark Levine, several council members have come through tonight: Natasha Williams, Councilmember Linda Lee, Councilmember Amanda Farias, Councilmember Rita Joseph, our Commissioner Eric Dalton is here, Administrator Scott French, Commissioner Saloni Sethi, Manhattan Deputy President Misha Smith. So we can give it up for all of those officials that are here. I want to recognize our board. I know our board chair, Reginald Goins, who is absolutely incredible, is going to recognize them as well. But I want to thank our board for all your work. I have the best board chair in the business. That is just a fact. Yes, he is my boss, so I would say that anyway. But I actually mean it in this case, and he knows that I mean it. He is my partner in everything I do and one of my closest friends, and I appreciate you so much, Reginald. I want to recognize the executive team who's here in the room. Raise your hands from the executive team that are here. These are the folks that help run the organization. I want to recognize our fundraising and events team, led by Aisha Khan and Connor Kainetino. Aisha, Connor, will you raise your hands? This is a really professional event. It looks beautiful, it's seamless, and it doesn't just happen by accident. Part of what happens is you hire an incredible person to run that team, and they do a great job doing it, and everything flows from there. So thank you, Aisha, I appreciate you. So they're not here, but we have 1,300 staff, the vast majority of whom have extremely difficult jobs. I would argue the hardest jobs I've ever seen. These are the frontline staff working with our residents in our shelters, in our affordable housing, and our mental health work, our education work, our after-school work, and I want to give them a big shout out. So thank you so much to my colleagues across the organization. And along with them, I've been most inspired by meeting our tens of thousands of clients. And you're gonna see, you saw some of our residents were serving in YPC Chorus. You're gonna meet an incredible and hear more about a former VOA client named Rick, who you'll see up later. And I just want to thank and shout out all of our clients as well across the greater New York area. I want to particularly highlight, so a couple of weeks ago, and I called Reginald about this, there was a client we had. Her name was Andrea Schwade. I want you to really remember that name tonight, Andrea Schwade. Andrea lived in one of our residences out in New Jersey and spent the last couple decades of her life as a resident and a client of Volunteers of America. And we helped her so much It turns out she was saving away and plugging away and being really smart, investing away, and she kept saying as she was getting older, she wanted to find a way to pay us back. Well, 2 weeks ago, she donated half of her estate, $130,000 and $71 to Volunteers of America, Greater New York. Andrea Schwade. She's not going to get a building named after her. She's not going to have her name in lights. But as far as I'm concerned, that's the most inspirational thing I've ever seen. And if you want to think about how much it matters that we spend the money right, which we do at VOA, I just think about Andrea's donation. We'll spend the money that you've given tonight with that kind of care, and I'm going to tell you about that now. So basically, I've been in the job for just over 2 years, and I've learned a lot. That is an understatement. But let me start with the most basic, because I said this last year. We are not a volunteer organization, okay? If you take away anything, we are not a volunteer organization. We're a housing and a homelessness organization. We work with tens of thousands of homeless adults and families. We're in the process of building thousands of new affordable homes, well over $1 billion's worth of affordable homes. You can see just some of the images up here, and you'll hear about them tonight. We're trying to enact common sense policies to reduce poverty and to dramatically reduce homelessness. So that's the most key thing I could probably tell you. But here's the other thing that I've been thinking about that I learned a lot. Nick Brass, who's going to be miserable that I'm highlighting him in front of me, our executive vice president, our chief of staff. Yeah, he deserves it. There we go. But not too much applause. Like, we don't want the ego to, no, it's good. So he reminds me of all the time. Like, I'll get frustrated that we're not making fast enough progress toward change, and I'll ask why, and why can't we move it on this, and I'll get like an annoying child, basically. And like, Nick goes into this like Yoda sort of mode, and he just gets right to the truth, and he just says, don't forget, it all comes back to stigma. And in case it wasn't enough to hear this from Nick, just recently I had a birthday. I had my 48th birthday, just last week. I know what you're thinking right now. I don't look a day over 50. Thank you. But you know, I had my birthday, and my daughter Kathleen, who's here. Kathleen, you can raise your hand. She's next to my wife Erin, my two most important people in this room to me. So my daughter gave me for my birthday this book that's called "They Just Need to Get a Job," in quotes, by Mary Brosnahan, talking about the myths around homelessness. And I want to challenge you for a minute just to sit here and in the most honest way in your head, think about those myths and that stigma that you have, that we all have, that you have about where you're thinking about homeless people. And these myths that have been carried through, like, and the book talks about, so homeless people are addicted to drugs, or homeless people are lazy, just not working, or homeless people are just single men, like living in the street. I know this is I'm preaching the converted, you're here, you're supporting, but I want to give you facts to tell your friends. Homelessness is mainly because people can't afford a home. It sounds very common sense, but it's true, and it really matters. And actually, most homeless people, 70%, are children and families, okay? So when we think about poverty in New York City, Robin Hood and Columbia, both of whose leaders are here tonight, Dean Begg, Rich Bury, they put out an annual report just recently, just in March. 26% of New Yorkers are living in deep poverty. This is twice the national rate. 26%, twice the national rate. That comes out to 450,000 children in New York City living in poverty. Now, the Coalition for the Homeless, whose head Dave Giffen is also here tonight, they've given us more stats, and they track it real close. Right now, we have over 100,000 people experiencing homelessness, again, 70% of our families. 1 in 7 students in the New York City schools, which I know a thing or two about, 1 in 7 last year experienced homelessness. 1 in 7 in the schools you drive by and walk by and go by every single day last year experienced homelessness. Paige talked about Operation Backpack. I love Operation Backpack. We just got our estimates from the city of how many backpacks we're gonna have to make with your help this coming year. It's over 30,000 backpacks. Why do we have to make 30,000 backpacks? Because as you said, 30,000 kids are gonna go from shelter to school in the fall. And it's like they're giving the estimate now because like we know. Like if things don't change, that's what it will be. We should want to put Operation Backpack out of business. I don't want to do Operation Backpack anymore. I don't want to have to give a kid in shelter a backpack for school. I want them to pack up their things at home, like my kids do before they go to school. While we're doing it, I appreciate many of your support. I hope you join into it, because when you pack that back, you really have to experience it. But I don't want to have to do it anymore. There's this myth about homeless people in deep poverty not working. Just come to our shelters, you don't believe me. Come to our employment shelters, as we call them. Come to any of them, because you'll just see people literally going to work every day from our shelters. It's that simple. So if you don't believe, you can come on with me anytime. Median rents have gone up 20% over just the last decade and compared to incomes. So it's just simple. The rents are going up much faster than the incomes, and that's been actually a multi-decade trend. People can't afford the rent even when they're working. And then there's this horrible myth, this horrible idea that this is all impossible to solve. That I've just given you all this bad news, there's nothing we can do. It's just literally not true. I took this job because it's not true. I've seen that it's not true. Let me give an example of what progress can look like, even when it's not perfect. The average stay for someone in a shelter in New York City is very sadly 450 days. And I know this new administration is really working to change that, but that's been the stay. At VOA, we're now down to 230 days, okay? So you go, that is way too much, right? But it's progress, thank you. And our team has worked hard to get that number down. It shows what's possible. In 2025, 1,155 of our residents found permanent, affordable homes. And here's what's so amazing about that. When people get into a permanent home that they can afford, we've seen the data, only 4% ever return to shelter. Yeah, it's great. So we know that when we can get people into affordable permanent homes, their lives can change, and then they can lift themselves from there and not come back into the shelter system. It's the right thing to do. It also makes sense in terms of the cost. So when I look up on these screens, and I think about 119th Street, and we can show that even more in here if we can do it. I think about when I decided that I wanted to move on from East Harlem tutorial program. I'm still very involved. I know many of you in this room from there. I had started a bunch of schools in East Harlem. I had spent almost 17 years of my life in East Harlem. And when I worked a very long time with a student, and I was really seeing them make progress, and they were always on time. And one day, because I went there, I realized that the student had been living in shelter and had been transferred so far away from the school, and the family and the student didn't want to be late, so they had asked to live in the back of a bodega next to our school so they could go. It still makes me emotional thinking about it, because I still really feel for that student. And I just said, you know what, this is not okay. We're gonna have to have great schools for sure, but we're also gonna have safe and secure housing. That housing is literally the start. And it makes sense, you know that, because you're thinking about where you're gonna go back after this gala tonight and where you're gonna wake up in the morning. And if you didn't have anywhere to go, literally, like, what would you do after this? How would it work? Where would your kids be now, or your family members, or your friends? How would it work? And so we're doing it at VOA, and what's so exciting is I get to announce tonight, and it's part of what our Magnuson is working with us, that at 119th Street, there's gonna be a new development. It's gonna have 1,200 residents living there in permanent, affordable homes. 1,200 on 119th Street. They'll be our biggest project yet. If you kind of look at the corner there or the corner here, you can see just kind of the top of the half of the building, 'cause it's gonna rise up on 119th Street. We're gonna have formerly homeless families. We're gonna have formerly homeless veterans there. We're gonna have formerly homeless community members who are there, and it's gonna be game-changing for that neighborhood. And we can do so much more in the city. What I will tell you is that we have to do all this work on the ground, and we need your support to also change policy. Some nonprofits are afraid of talking about policy. I am not. I actually think that if nonprofits don't help change policy, I actually don't get what they're doing. We do things on the ground that show what works, and then we need to advocate for those things to be done at scale. This is New York City. This is prime time. When we change policy here and we get things right here, the world watches. So it's important that we do that. Now, one of the biggest things that we're advocating for is we want to see the housing vouchers program expanded. This sounds super geeky, sounds really technical. It's called City FEPS, and it's a voucher program that helps people get into permanent housing. And it's something that a lot of people agree on and want to see expanded, including this administration, including City Council, many others, but it's going to be really hard to do. But here's the thing. It costs almost $80,000 a year for someone to live in shelter. A lot of nonprofits don't want to talk about that. I'm going to talk about it. It costs a lot for a lot of reasons for someone to be in shelter, but a voucher costs $20,000 a year. And people going to vouchers almost never, it's less than 5%, come back into the shelter system. And people who are in the shelter system keep coming back to the shelter system. We see it over and over again. So you're going to see this, and I urge you to advocate for this and to join us in pushing both at the state level, the city level, the federal level for the funds that are necessary to make this happen. This is how you address an underlying problem. It will save money and it will save lives. The last thing I'll just say is, last year I talked a lot about social isolation. And I'm probably going to, if you keep coming back, and I hope you do, I'm probably always going to mention it, and here's why. Because when you come to this event tonight, when you're with each other in community, whatever the reason is, you are actually breaking up this period of unprecedented social isolation in the United States. And why am I saying that from my standpoint? Because I believe that when we are socially isolated, we don't mean to, but we start to lose that care and that empathy for other people around us. And the people that suffer the most are the clients that I've met at Volunteers of America. So it's so important. Enjoy your time tonight with each other. Find those friends, get out and talk about these things and connect with others maybe you've never met, maybe that you really disagree with. And talk through these things, and let's figure out how to do better by each other as New Yorkers and show the country how it's done. Thank you so much.